Welcome, everyone, to our buddy read chat for The Witchwood Crown by Tad Williams. I'm joined by this wonderful collection of gentlemen, Dr. Philip Chase, Nikhil from Shelf Esteem, and Andy Smith, all holding up our nice copies of The Witchwood Crown. So this is the series restart for the Osten Ard saga, the beginning of the last king of Osten Ard, taking place around 30 years after the end of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. So we're going to start with non-spoiler thoughts for anyone who's not read the series or even gotten to this book. We'll start vague and non-spoiler with our reactions before diving in on spoilers. So if you haven't read it, you'll be safe for us hanging out for a little while. And I'd just love to go around and hear non-spoiler reactions to this extremely chunky book one series reset. It's one of the more unique, I think, types of epic fantasy books. Of a long time has passed in real world since Tad Williams finished the series, and 30 years or so passed in world, and such a fascinating kind of situation that we don't get too often. So I'd love to hear spoiler-free thoughts for anyone who wants to jump in.
Phil, you open your mouth first. Yeah, it's your. Go for it.
Okay. I'm happy to start us off. This actually surprised me how much I loved this book. I loved Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. I thought that Tad Williams was doing something interesting and different in the heart. It's the heart of what was lost. Is it? No, am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The bridge novella. I enjoyed that the tonal difference that was going on there is something that carries through probably even more here in the Witchwood Crown. This is a grittier story than Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Still gorgeous prose. I still have immense affection for the carryover characters and some new ones as well. So that's wonderful. But yeah, this was as much as it is a big chunky book, I just adored it. I felt like I was in my reader's heaven here, reading what's really kind of wheelhouse kind of epic fantasy for me, but done with even more nuance than his earlier series, I think, and just wonderful insights into such things as like a marriage that's been going on for 30 plus years. There aren't a lot of fantasies where you see that kind of thing portrayed, but such a rich relationship, complete with the deepest kind of affection you can find. But at the same time, there are the losses that have accumulated over the years and have marked these people. There are younger characters who are growing into the world in painful ways. And of course, there's the big threats that are looming over this world. That this stuff unfolded in some interesting ways, surprised me. There were 3 big reveals in this that completely, like, I got, T-boned there. Boom. I was like, what? Oh, okay. So I just thought that was brilliant. I love it when an author can do that to me in a way that's so compelling. And I hadn't realized how tight this was. And I have to wonder, had he mapped this out when he when he did Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, or did this come to him? Because there's a big gap between the first trilogy that's really a tetralogy and the second trilogy that's really a tetralogy, right? Because The Last King of Osten Ard was also supposed to be a trilogy, with the third book turned into but yeah, I just completely loved this reading experience. This is going to be contender for book of the year for me. I don't know. I mean, do the rest of the books in the series, are they better than this? I don't know. But I loved this a lot. And I don't think enough people have read The Last King of Osten Ard.
Yeah, it's wild. If you look at the number of ratings for the original trilogy versus the newer one, it's a gigantic difference. And
even the original, even Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn is underrated in my opinion. I think it deserves more love. But so far, I feel like that Tad Williams really has upped his game in this. So I'm here.
Love it. And from his introductions to the books, and my sense is that he didn't plan out this whole sequel, sequence of events originally, and that he just, there were some loose threads that he had left at the end of that previous trilogy, and I don't think he planned to actually come back. And then after decades of people, probably wondering what was happening and ideas percolating, I think he realized he could pick up and have something more to say in this world. And I'm so thankful too, because I had a wonderful time with it too. It's not going to be your fast moving, action packed epic fantasy. I mean, this is similar, just the slow burn setup of putting all these different pieces into place. And I was joking with y'all in our last chat that I was hoping we would get some, maybe some cozy fantasy time in Osten Ard where there wasn't too much earth-shaking conflict going on. And man, he kind of skipped that bit of the 30 years of peace in the land, and then he drops us right back into this time of dread. And it was so fascinating to see all these different pieces he was kind of setting up and putting into place for this new conflict. And I'm just so on board for it. Yeah, I loved it. And just some of the new characters we got, I found ultra compelling. Can't wait to chat about them soon in detail. But yeah, this is a fantastic series reset for me. I love that, coming back to some of these same characters and seeing where they're at and seeing how they feel recognizably themselves, but also having organically grown over a few decades, and just to pick up with them and then see some of the younger generation too. It was so energizing. And man, Williams' prose is just so lush and immersive for me. It just, there's never a false note here. It just is so transportive. It's just an absolute highlight of reading this series.
I just noticed, Ben, that your moniker is Bengus of Nad Malak. I love that. I might add, I'll be in maybe a different category of like. I really liked this book, but I haven't talked about it yet. So a lot of this live might. Oh no, Ben is dying. A lot of this live chat, I'm going to need y'all's help in kind of talking through some stuff. So this is a 4-star book for me. I really, really enjoyed it. And Tad Williams, I do agree, a couple people in the chat have said is really underrated in the fantasy community. And I completely agree. Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, Philip, as you said, I think is really underrated. But Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn is not sort of in my top 10 or maybe even like top 20 fantasy series of all time. And one of the reasons why is, as beautiful as Williams' prose is, I struggle with his pacing. And I find that he, at times, some combination of how he tells things and the rhythm of his storytelling sometimes leaves me a little bit frustrated with that pace, which is interesting because I love slow fantasy, right? Like my top 3 favorite fantasy is Lord of the Rings, Malazan, and Realm of the Otherlings, which like a lot of people's main critiques, if they don't like any of those, is like too slow, too pondering, too meandering. So like Williams should be in my wheelhouse. And so I kind of want to talk about this with y'all because each of like the individual storylines, right? Like what's going on at Nagika. And Philip, I agree. The reveals at the end, I thought I knew where the reveals were going to be, and they were not at all what I was expecting. And really felt meaningful, and like things are really hitting. And, I like the characters individually, but like as a whole, at the end, I was like, that was good, really solid. I'm excited for the next book, but it's probably not going to be my book of the year. So I'm excited to talk about it for that reason. That said, I already started Empire of Grass, so like it's really worked on like my desire to see the end of this. But it felt a lot like Memory and Sorrow and Thorn for me, both in good ways and also in a few not negative, but not as great ways, right? Like I'm comparing this to some of my favorite all time, which already means that he's doing a great job.
Yeah, I think I was reading in the I think it was the preface maybe that or the foreword, I forget which one which one is which, but Tad Williams was talking about how he had kind of sworn off doing anything in this world again for a while, and people were just asking him probably at various conventions and stuff like, hey, when are you going to do something more? And I think he just didn't want to do it until he had something more to say. And man, he must have been saving like 25 years of ideas or something, because I felt like this book was so sprawling. There was so much that happened in this book. It was kind of unbelievable. I mean, I've read other sequel series before, and one thing I feel like that can be trapping is like you feel like it's kind of doing fan service for, hey, remember that time when something from the original trilogy happened, or oh, here's an appearance of a character you missed from the first trilogy or something like that. Whereas this felt like it was a real progression. Where Simon and Miriamel are, like both in their married life, but then also as individuals, they've kind of changed beyond. Like Simon is a different character in some ways, and we can get maybe more into the spoiler dynamics between some other characters and why there might be friction there. But I thought that was really interesting. Like the 30-year time span gave just enough for there to be real character growth and evolution, but at the same time, not so long that some of the characters are like not on the page anymore. So you can kind of see where they're at now, and like see this kind of it's almost like a nexus of where generations meet, which was kind of cool. I was gonna say something else about it, but yeah, I guess yeah, maybe also the revelations themselves. For me, they took me completely by surprise as well. I did not expect that they would go the places they would. And I found it really interesting how, and we saw this in Heart of What Was Lost, but I feel like it was explored in more depth in this, was how you never get a chance to see like the opposing side in their most granular level. It's like if you imagine, Star Wars and like the Empire or whatever, and like looking at individual stormtroopers' lives and stuff. I don't know. It's just you're seeing dynamics that both make them feel completely parallel to the to Simon and the crew, and then things that feel completely different in the way they operate. So I found that to be very interesting as well. The fact that you could go granular with both sides of the conflict. It's kind of cool. So yeah, I had a blast with this. In fact, it's kind of gotten me. It's tough to read anything else right now. I finished it. I was gonna pick up something else, and I was like, I just need to find out what's going on. So I might even start Empire of Grass today after this.
Yeah, I'm feeling so similar. This is truly just the setup of everything, and then
Wow.
we get the feeling like right at the end of this, some dominoes are starting to fall, and yeah, it's very much he's writing this as one giant tale like Lord of the Rings, and not like really standalone novels. And so it does feel like we're just leaving off right at the end of part one, which
And
is yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and also, as far as the pacing and the kind of the slower aspects of this novel, which I think it's an interesting juxtaposition because a lot happens, but things happen slowly and they kind of bloom over time. So, Andy, like I know you were talking about some of the pacing things, and
Yeah.
maybe that's also like I did feel it a few times in the book, but I've just been kind of just trusting the process of the author, kind of a thing. And what I found is inadvertently, maybe because of this, but I feel so like more in the world because even the slower parts, you're kind of just getting deeper and deeper immersed into it or something. At least that's how I felt. So I felt more immersed into this novel than even some other slow burn ones. And maybe for the reasons where it didn't always feel like an even ride.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think that's right, and part of that is personal preference. I just my copy is the actual narrative is about 690 pages, and sort of as I was just like meditating on what had happened, each of the storylines I had liked, what had happened, I was like, could that 691 be 550? Which is not, in editing that's doable. And I was like, I think it could have been. And I think, just a little bit, this is a small thing, but I'm thinking of like my best all-time fantasy works versus this. I just felt like there was a little too much carefulness in some of the storylines. Like we'll be specific. I think once we get to spoilers, there's like 2 or 3, I think that could have been better handled. Actually, well, no, it's not. When we talk spoilers, I have one very specific example of what I think could be done. But a lot of this is, I'm not a fantasy author. I don't want a backseat author. I'm just, for me, why it would be sort of my best, like all time. But again, I'm comparing this to Live Ship Traders, right? Like these are huge books that I love. So It's a critique, but it was one that is made of love.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit there with you on this one, and I was there on Dragonbone Chairs. I tend to be a lover of middle books and final books, and once we get the ball rolling on the all the inciting incidents and the plots, and we start hurtling towards the major events, I tend to be less of just a lover of the setup book ones, and so I felt you a little bit on this one. It definitely, I was taking it slow, so I was trying to not rush it like I did Dragonbone Chair, and so I was taking my time with it, but it did take a bunch of weeks to get through this, and as we switch around from location to location, and it takes a long time for a lot of these little storylines just within this book to kind of move forward and resolve, and he'll depart certain POV or storyline for a long time before we come back around to it, because there's so much ground that he's covering. So I actually felt a little bit of that same thing with you there, Indy, and when I look back, I don't think I would cut out maybe any chapters or sequences, but he does, within some scenes, he can take his sweet time just getting to what is the point the character's trying to make to this other character, and they talk around it for a little while and then get to the point. Or there are definitely moments where it felt like we could have sped things up here and there for me a little bit. So yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from on that one.
And one of the things, Nikhil, like what you said, like trust the author. Like I think that's true. I think one of the reasons that I'm kind of focusing on it early is I do feel a little bit with Memory and Sorrow and Thorn, that To Green Angel Tower, Williams never focused back. Like he kept sort of building and expanding and expanding. I think that kind of took away from that final book. Like I thought the expansiveness became too much, where like the momentum was never as good as I thought it could have been by that third book. And I guess I can spoil that. If people are watching this, they've probably read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. But like the stuff that's happening with Joshua, the stuff that's happening like in the mountain, the stuff that is happening on the with the Niska and the or the Niskis, whatever they're called, on the ocean, like all of that I felt like was overcoming, I think, like sort of the central Storm King Simon plot line at the end of this trilogy. So maybe part of it is like I'm a little nervous, like is this going to happen again, where like there's this this ever expanding thing that I never felt like comes back together. So that, and I hadn't thought of that till you had kind of mentioned that. So that might be part of it too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I was reading To Green Angel Tower, I was feeling like the first couple hundred pages, I was like, man, he's a lot to resolve, in the final 1,000 or whatever. But yeah, no, I think I see what you're saying, Andy, on that one. Yeah.
I think I'll move us into spoiler territory, and let's see if I can warn people visually too.
While you're doing that, I might just say one other thing. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but as I said, I haven't done a TBR video because my life has been crazy recently, so I haven't been able to talk about this for a while. But I would say a cool part about the theme of this book, I think, is like when you don't deal with evil, when you don't abruptly take on wrongdoing and try to make justice out of it, it can regrow. No matter how much you think this ideology or this cause has been put to bed, if you're not able to make the hard choices to do that, it can rise again, which like in our present time of rising fascist authoritarianism in my country, the United States, and around the world, like I think it was a very prescient book to read during 2026.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's so many resonating themes with our current world, and so it's that interesting mix of we're escaping into this fantasy world, but it resonates so deeply with our lives here, creating an interesting kind of reading experience and tension for me while I'm doing it. All right, I think we'll go into spoiler territory. So if you have not read Witchwood Crown or the original trilogy, I would say goodbye to us for now and come back after you've read it. So just be warned, we'll go into spoilers for Witchwood Crown from here on out. And I don't know where anyone wants to take it, but I might start this off. Instead of starting at the beginning, I might start towards the end, because I was wondering if I was feeling, maybe if I was being thick or whatnot when I did not get the feeling for why he was spending so much time with Unver in the Thrythings, why we were spending so much time with Soja up in Nakiga. I thought that was maybe just a connection to Vieki, who we got to know in Heart of What Was Lost.
Yep.
I did not see. I thought we were maybe going to pick up with the prophecy with Jasua and Varsheva's kids, maybe in a future book, and so it just smacked me upside the head when it got revealed who Unver and Soja were right towards the end. I don't know.
What's even more embarrassing, Ben, is after the Unver reveal that he's and Varsheva's son. I didn't even see the next one coming. I didn't see her reveal. It was like, oh, you did it to me. It was like smack and then smack. It was like I didn't see her reveal. That she was the sister.
No, I didn't see either of those coming either. And actually, the whole book, I thought it was Jaruf. Is that how you guys say it in your head? The guy who was
Yarnulf. Yeah.
Yarnulf. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Yarnulf. Yarnulf.
I don't say these out loud, so now I'm like, what? Jarnulf. I thought he was Joshua's son. Like the whole time, because it like made sense, and I was like, oh, of course, he's whatever. And then just like completely didn't get it, and both were like great reveals.
And I immediately went back to Green Angel Tower to read the prophecy. It was like and then it was brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Yeah,
that's why I thought, okay, he must have had something in mind when he wrote that prophecy into Green Angel Tower. It's not like he didn't do a Tolkien and fix the Hobbit, and after the Lord of the Rings was, that's what Tolkien did, right? To fix that scene with Gollum and Bilbo so that it would fit Lord of the Rings. It was like he had that prophecy in there. Mm-hmm. So that was wild. That was wild.
Yeah, which is basically she will spend time with people who are not her own.
Yeah.
And he will be
He'll never be a king, but he will change kingdoms or something like that. Mm. Yeah. And I'm thinking that he's going to be leading the horsey people. They're kind of like Dothraki, or they're essentially the barbarians on horses who are the Mongols or whatever. They're going to change. They're going to have once a leader unites them. Watch out. Right.
Yep. Empire of Grass. Yeah. That's the name of the next book.
Yeah.
And what about the Pasvales moment? I gasped at that moment. Dear Pasvales, who was this cute kid in to Green Angel Tower, and we met him in Naben, and he's been taken into the Hayholt by Simon and Mary Mellon, and seen the whole book to just be the utterly loyal kind of chancellor kind of figure, advising and taking care of the administrative stuff. And I think I was just like taking him for granted the entire book, and was like, oh, you're getting duped by Adela, who's trying to, glom onto you as a powerful person in the castle. And like when he pushed her off, and we see he got a letter from Drusus, who's this kind of evil duke figure in Naben, and then he's like, and all of a sudden, Tad didn't take his time there in that scene. Like, it happened fast. Like, I gasped. I could not believe that was an incredible slow burn.
I had to go back and reread it. It was like, wait, did I just read that?
Yeah. And it was the brilliance of that writing is that we have a lot of Pasvales' viewpoint, POV, in this book that we read before that, where we are supposed to keep thinking that he's like a good guy, or at least like that he has good intentions. And when that happened, I realized that the whole book I'd kind of been like, this guy seems a little sleazy, a little something, but I'd never mentioned it. It's like Ted Williams is always writing knowing this is happening. And, the thing about plot twists is you have to be so careful, because the reader has to believe that this is a really thing that happened, while also still being shocked. And just like that, it was perfect. Both of I was like, yes, okay, this guy is sleazy, pushes her down. And then how brutal he is, that not just pushes her, but then
steps on her face.
Crushes her skull. And it's like, And then you're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, game changer is
I was like, Simon, and just like a few scenes earlier, Simon's like, oh yeah, Passivalis, I trust you. You're like one of 3 or 4 people I trust.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, Simon, me too. Go
Yeah.
Passivalis. And then that scene, whoa.
Yep.
Oh man, it's
Yeah.
it's frightening. He's setting up all of these aspects that are just filling me with dread. Like, there's so few people that are on the side of fighting for good right now, who, like, against all this encroaching darkness, and it's hard for them to even find allies, and they can't even connect with the Scythi, who maybe are in the same boat as them. And there's this tragic bit at the end where Driki and D2 are, maybe it's not the time for us to make allies with them, and so there's all this encroaching dread of in Hernastir with Hugh is being influenced by this widow character who worships this old Hernastiri god who seems maybe connected to the Whisperer and what's going on in Nakiga. And the Queen awakens, and she's just kind of like this totalitarian kind of figure who wants to cleanse the world of everything that's not the Norns. And that's frightening with everything that's going on there. And then there's the conflict in Naben, where it seems like the peaceful Duke who's ruling there is his brother's threatening him, trying to undermine his rule there. And there's conflict brewing between them and the Thrythings folk, and they're just like a very violent society with conflict going on. Like, so there's all these different places of conflict and it just is so intense. And I felt, man, just within the Hayholt, I'm like, oh, this is our little sanctuary where Simon and Mirmel are gonna be fighting for good, and to know that someone inside is now maybe trying to be undermining them, it's so terrifying to me. Man, Williams is not backing off the dread pedal.
One of the things I love about it all is how skillfully he draws from Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn for the seeds of what's happening now in so many ways. Just a minor example, we were talking about Passivalis. He had a traumatic childhood that we read about. It was treated, somewhat superficially. His father and his uncle were killed when his father was actually disguised as Joshua, remember, in the final battle. And I thought that, by making him, oh, he's that kid. I remember he's the one who showed the helmet. He gave the helmet to what's his name, the Camaras. He's that lovable little kid and that plucky little kid and so he completely got me there, because I was thinking of this kid, the whole time, this innocent kid. But this was a kid who suffered major trauma because of the earlier conflict, and probably fell in with some bad people as a result, and was used, or I don't know, we don't even know how big this is. Like, what plot is he part of right now? Is it in any way related to some of the other things going on? Like, who's been shooting the Scythi, right? Is he part of those people? There's just a lot that is still, I want to find out about, which is, I guess, why you guys kept reading right into the next book.
I want to go for a quote here that I flagged as one of my favorites in the book. It's from page 323, and it's Simon thinking, just reflecting on some things, and how Miriamel had been forced to kill her own father, and she never spoke of it. Simon tried never to mention it, and then here he goes into a little italicized reflection. But it will never be that way again. We won't let it. Miri must know that. Yes, bad things will still happen. That's the lot of mortal man. But Miri and I, we are meant to be the happily afterward. The king found himself unconvincing. I just really stopped there and thought Tad just wrote a banger of a line. I love how he's exploring this idea of the happily ever afterward, and that in all of our myths and fairy tales and stories that end there, there's all of this in our real world. We still have to go on through future generations, and even if this king and queen are responsible rulers, doesn't mean that conflict's not going to be right around the corner again. And we have to figure all this out all over as we try to transition into a future generation, or deal with the festering evil that we didn't fully root out from before. And I got these moments of like, oh man, I wish Simon and Miri were even just more cruel or harsher in how they were dealing with stuff. Like once they got the sense that, you know, Hugh and that woman who is he's going to be marrying in her next year, or there might be some evil things going on. They're like, they're just like, oh, okay, I guess that's just going to play out, and we'll let it be, and we'll see what, you know, they have this goodness to them that, and they're, you know, and we know that Duke of Skirmer tried to root out the Nords after the battle, wasn't able to, and so but that didn't seem like that was, you know, Simon and Miri that were really spearheading that, but like they're maybe not as ruthless as they need to be to deal with all of the coming conflict, which is scary from my point of view, because man, they're such a precious couple that I want them to live out their happily afterward, as Tad put it.
Yeah, I love this relationship so much, and like I said in the beginning, and of course they're who I was talking about when we were talking non-spoilers, just the fact that you have this married couple, they've been married for more than 30 years, and you don't often see that portrayed with this kind of depth and nuance, where they know each other so well, and there are, because of the death of their son, and that's another thing we don't really entirely understand what it had to do with the book that was discovered, that was in his possession. Very mysterious circumstances, I think, but that loss is something that is part of that relationship now, and it's something they carry with them all the time, and yet the affection and the love is you know, still beneath that, and still very much a solid foundation. But yeah, I mean, she's angry at him because he's a goofball, but she loves him because he's a goofball, and you know, there's just so much I love going on there, and just to see them grown like that into who they are. You know, and Simon, he is a goofball, but he has his own kind of wisdom, and Miri is I think the real backbone there, and you know, she's the tough one, and but they really complement each other beautifully. You know, it's such a really rich. I enjoyed it so much. I mean, I could have just even in the quiet moments of them, I could have. Tad, you could have gone on and on with that for me.
Yeah. Oh, they had wonderful moments there. But Miri, like the wound of losing John Joshua is so raw for her.
Yeah,
she hasn't fully processed it in a way that like when Simon is given that kind of thing by Biddenbick to help him have his dreams again, and he has a dream that seems like, ooh, this is going to be helpful for you all, and Miri's like, I can't deal with this. Smush the dream kind of item, so Simon doesn't have to have these dreams anymore. And I'm like, oh no, like that was really useful for him to be dreaming again. Like, and then at the end though, she has her own dream, and she relates that to him in the letter, and is now starting to wrangle with this all again. But the way that Williams wrote the ever-present wound of losing their son was so poignant just throughout. There were these little moments where they'd be referencing them, or it was always painful for them and for us to read.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just add to that. One of the things I love about Williams is, yes, we love Simon and Miri quite a lot, but also I think this book shows quite a lot of the flaws of both them as characters, but also their reign, and why it's kind of brought to this level. I think one of the, like we talked about Simon, he's a little bit of a, he's lovable, he's kind, he's very noble, but he is not the most, I don't know, focused monarch. And you can see how these little kingdoms, you know, would start having their own little power fights, and the centralized throne not coming down on that or unifying it in ways that normally empires would have to do to maintain order of some kind. And Miri is like the opposite end, so kind of sort of minute and detail minded that also she could be overthink or you know, focus on what's in front of her and trying to rein in Simon. And so together they weren't able to sort of they held peace for 30 years, but it's quite clear in this book that like they haven't been keeping super close tabs. And even when they're doing this traveling, you know, they travel to two separate areas. they're not very good about keeping peace or keeping the quelling what might be growing in those areas of the country, whether that is it Hennesir at the beginning and then up in Rimmersgard. And so I think, and I would just say, like, the other interesting comparing sort of Hayholt to Nagika is, like, both of them are still sort of fighting yesterday's war, in the sense of Nagika, like, I love having more perspectives inside, because you see so much of the problem there is not just that all Norns are bad people. It's that the Norns are built into this, like, authoritarian caste system that, like, thrives on oppression. And so they have to continue to expand that oppression outwards, or, like, chaos is ensuing. And so they have to keep up this battle of, like, destroying everyone for, like, their society to survive. And obviously it's in a much better way, but in the, like, Miri and Simon are trying to keep alive this Prester John empire that, you know, leads them not to do things that I think they know they should have done, which is, like, reached out more to the folks of the forest and try to bring about a little bit more of, like, a unity rather than just sort of a power central. So, like, it's, Ben, you said, like, it's hard to know who's fighting good for evil, because, like, a lot of this book is about, like, these larger systems having to be maintained, and the actors just within these systems doing things that maybe aren't correct, but are, like, maintaining these things, and that's the system is ultimately what's causing all this tension. At least that's how I read it. I think
including the High Ward itself, where it, you know, maybe it's working with Simon and Miri as this two-headed kind of monarchical system, but it, you know, Morgan is not prepared and is probably not the right person to be the High King of, you know, all of these lands, and they're just kind of planning for him to take over, and instead of, you know, trying to figure out how could they maybe diffuse power or set up new institutions that might be more suitable just going forward. And so, yeah, they're just kind of within this monarchical state of mind and thinking, you know, it's going to be passing on to Morgan, and we got to get him ready, rather than truly, you know, evaluating whether passing power along to him is appropriate or the right thing to do. Which is, there's all these interesting little tensions going on where, Simon and Miri are not the most enlightened, political philosophers, but
it might be also. It feels like they are kind of treating their rule how it would have been relevant in Prester John's time, in terms of, like, the way they approach it, kind of more steeped in tradition. Whereas, like you all mentioned, you know, 30 years have passed and these things have gotten so much more nuanced, where the Norns are right now versus where they were at the time, and where kind of more of the political machinations between these different, you know, like Passavelas and you know, there's danger from all sides. It requires a more nuanced rule, and it feels like they're kind of still ruling from the vantage point of what was true 30 years ago. And that feels like, you know, even the way Simon kind of treats Morgan, and Simon and Miriamel's disagreements about how Morgan should be treated and stuff like that. Like, you could see they're kind of spread thin, you know, butter spread over too much bread or something.
Yeah, well, that actually is, I think, a running theme here, and something you especially see with the Norns. And Andy was alluding to this, and I think Mick Scarfield in the chat was also talking about a comparison to World War II Japan. You know, I think there's a similarity there for sure. I was thinking the same. And there's a rigidity, there's an adherence to tradition, which, of course, we get our cultural identity in large part through our traditions. So they play an important role in that. But I think there's also a degree to which blind and rigid adherence to tradition can lead us into dangerous places. You know, the Norns are, you know, there are aspects of their culture that I've become more sympathetic with as a result of The Heart of What Was Lost and this book. There are some of them who seem decent enough, like Viecki is he you know, I think if he had been raised in a more less honor coded society, you know, he probably would have been even more empathetic. But, you know, he has thoughts like, well, maybe we don't have to kill all the mortals. Maybe we could keep some of them alive. You know, he's kind of like a guy with a lot of privilege who if he had a little less privilege and he had gone through a little more suffering, might have been actually a really decent person, I think that Williams is doing a great job with this theme overall of, where adherence to tradition in a manner that is so rigid and so, kind of like fundamentalist and just basically to the point of, absolute aggression to anything that in any way seems to not conform, and especially toward the outside. Like that's what you typically see, is that kind of aggressive adherence to tradition usually means anything outside is bad, right? And you see, of course, the Norns have suffered tremendously at the hands of humanity, right? So it's that trauma is a reason for this rigidity as well, obviously, right? Like it's kind of like a violence breeds violence sort of thing, right? Another thing we see all the time in the world, unfortunately, and you even see it now with the Scythi, who are now there's a wedge between them and the humans, and that wedge, I believe, is being placed there deliberately by someone. We're not really sure who yet, but there's something going on there. Yeah.
And I would say I did say something about not liking the pace earlier. So I'll say one of the areas of slow pace that I love, because it underscores the importance of like systems that you are taught and tradition and adherence to that, and how hard it is to kind of deprogram from that, is how slowly both Fieki and Nazeru are slowly becoming disillusioned with that. But it's not one thing, it's not even two things, it's not three, it's like it has to be like sustained, and neither one of them have like broken from it at this point, and even when we finish the book. But their character change you can kind of feel coming, but it is slow, because it's when you're taught that adherence, it's not just like a moment, road to Damascus moment. It takes a long time.
Yeah, watching Nazeru very slowly start to shift in her mindset. She makes a choice not to, kill a fleeing child when they're in early on, and that's starting her on this journey of realizing she has her own personal values that conflict with her society's or the queen's directives, and she doesn't maybe buy into total obedience anymore, and maybe I gather she probably was influenced by her father with some of that, but seeing her kind of, she's on her own out here in doing the queen's mission, and seeing her have these little breaks in her thinking is fascinating. I'm hoping that continues, because I'd love for us to go on this arc of kind of fighting back against this kind of authoritarian kind of regime or society, and seeing individuals trying to break out of those cycles of obedience and violence.
I think that's going to play out, especially through her relationship with Yarnulf. Of course, we saw it in her before, because of what you mentioned, Ben, that she spares the child, although that ends tragically. But you do get this interesting dynamic going on between Nazeru and Yarnulf that is happening.
Yeah.
And of course, where we're left with that particular thread, when they do capture the baby dragon, then Mama Dragon comes along, and we get. I have to admit, I was okay. I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I was kind of cheering when the dragon first bit Kem in half.
Oh, yeah.
Also cheering when Mako got dragon blood all over him, and I was like, "Yeah, you kind of deserved that, buddy."
Yeah.
I mean, he's the biggest jerk in the whole book. The whole way through, I was thinking, somebody just punch him in the face, please. And when he gets the dragon blood all over him, and he's
yes, I felt the same.
I was like, yeah, you kind of had that coming, buddy.
This will be interesting, Philip, for you to know. My audiobook this month was Philip's second book, the Prophet of Adan. And so literally the same day that happened, I was listening to the second to last chapter of that book, which also has similar thing. It was a real dragon day, I'll just say that. So
yeah.
That was
something else that was a parallel between the two books. There was a rock climbing scene in both in both books.
It's
And,
yeah, there's some clear parallels, which is funny because I know you haven't read it, so it's just
I hadn't read this. I had read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn before writing, and I've said before, wow, I think Tad Williams was a bigger influence on me than I realized. And I'm reading this and thinking, wait, I did that in my trilogy. That's not fair. I didn't even read this, you know. So
great minds think alike, huh?
Yeah.
I guess.
Speaking of rock climbing, I'd love to chat about probably my favorite new aspect of the whole series is the character of Morgan. I think Tad is just doing something so interesting with this character. Just someone I sympathize with, can empathize with so deeply, and wish that he could. I'm with Simon so often throughout this book of needing to give him a kick in the pants and to get him out of his rut of going around drinking and just being irresponsible. And he seems disinterested, but it seems also so organic that someone who is born into the situation with neglectful parents too, and that his life would, with all this privilege, that would develop this way. It feels so believable and organic, and to watch him be so resentful of all this control that his grandparents are trying to have over him, and I could sympathize with it, but also be on the side of Simon and Mary, and then to watch him be dragged along on this mission into the forest to meet the Scythian, and he's still just resentful of that. And when he has that first moment of blowing the horn to Tuno, that was such a deep, earth-shaking moment for where he has this moment of he's playing this real role now, and there's this involvement too of the magic of the world that he has never really experienced before, that he's now a part of. And when he first sees the Scythy, it feels like he's just having his world completely blown open. And I feel like he's just going to be a completely different character from here on out. But it was a really long journey that we went on with Morgan to get there. I was just captivated by him in just about every scene.
Speaking of the prose of this book, I think one of my favorite passages was where Morgan blows into Tutuno, and it talks about how like him and the instrument becomes one, and it's like his breath is part of the instrument. The way it was described was phenomenal, and it got me thinking a lot about the relationship dynamics. It's like why Simon and Morgan butt heads so much is if you look at how Simon was in Dragonbone Chair, they're so much alike in a lot of ways. And they say that, right? Like when somebody annoys you a lot, in relationships, like it can be sometimes you see an aspect of yourself in them, and that's the resistance, that brings about the annoyance. And you could see the parallels between those two characters, even across generations.
The differences are just as important because Simon was a scullion, and he had a rough beginning, and Morgan he's had some terrible losses, and he had the neglect from his parents, but I also think he's been sheltered a lot by, especially Miriamel, because of the trauma of losing her son. She's holding Morgan too tightly. I think that's part of the problem. Simon, who's usually the idiot, actually, I think he's the more perceptive one in this case, where he wants Morgan to have to do something. He needs to push him out. He's like a kid who just hasn't been challenged, and he wants it too. I think there's a part of him that really wants to have an adventure, to do something. Of course, the adventures are never what you think they're going to be, but he needs to be challenged. He needs some hardship, in his life in order to become a stronger person. He just hasn't had that opportunity, especially with Miriamel just kind of hugging him tight, because she's been traumatized, by the loss of her son. But I think Mick Scarfield in the chat was right again in with the Henry V comparison, that Morgan is definitely there's that Shakespeare's play Henry V, of course, is what we're talking about. There's absolutely Prince Hal for sure, yeah. Although I don't think he has a false staff. Maybe those the two guys he hangs out with, the short one, maybe I didn't like him at all. His opening scene made me dislike him intensely because he was actually attacking that young woman. What was his name? Adrian. I forget his name, but I immediately disliked him. But yeah, he's kind of a false staff, I guess, to Morgan's Prince Hal. Yeah.
I am glad Morgan worked for you guys. my like spoiler one is like Morgan for me was sort of the weakness in this book. I had a lot of trouble connecting with him. I knew what Williams wanted me to do, but comparing my time with Morgan to my time with Jarnuf, Nazeru, the other characters that I'm in this book, like I really struggled with the Morgan. Like at the beginning, I was like, okay, kind of get this. I understand this guy's going to go on his hero's journey and he's going to, really, change and grow or whatever. I struggled with Morgan, I will say, and actually a little bit with Simon and Miramel too. I liked them, but also they're just more static. It's harder to be a king and queen than to be the, action stars like you are in Sorrow, Memory, and Thorn. So that what I was thinking of before of like the real pace that really struggled with me is the amount of times that I was with Morgan in a pub and he was drinking with his dumbass friends and Porto is like just too much for me. And like his sourness was too much. There's a little bit of like a shock to the system when he meets Troll, which is great. But then like even that like happens 2 or 3 too many times for me. That was kind of one of the things I thought was too much time with Morgan, and compare it, I think, to compare the Morgan storyline with my probably like 3 favorite are what's happening out in the grasslands with Unver and all that, which is probably only like 4 chapters total, but like each of those is like page turning greatness.
Yeah.
Nazeru, who's going on this really, really interesting quest, and things happen very quickly. It's very like emotionally and thematically rich because she's like learning about like what the Queen's will really means, while she's also like there's battles, real good stuff. And then same thing with Yarnold or Yarnulf, like he does a lot of stuff in this and is very thoughtful. You have he's very like internal, and you get flashbacks to like how he got all this is great. And then like Morgan is mostly a slow again in the pub. Towards the end, it does get better. Like when he actually goes on his mission, and when we get flashbacks to his time with his father, and the thing with the Red Priest, I think is very interesting. But like for the most part, I struggled with Morgan probably 3/4 of this book.
Yeah, no, I hear you so much. The thing about that, though, it was unpleasant to be in those pubs in the first half of the book with Morgan and his complaining, but it really gave like a visceral sense to me. Not just like one scene of it, but all of those scenes. It gave me a more visceral sense of the stagnation of his life,
Mm-hmm.
and
and he's supposed to be annoying too, right?
Yeah.
The repetitiveness I felt helped for me to truly feel to do that living in his shoes. And maybe a couple of those scenes like it could have been cut. We got the same sense. I might be with you there. Like the ice skating scene, we had them going off on the adventure up the mountain, which I thought was a great scene. And the kind of like that moon prophecy with the bones, and Morgan has no clue what to do with any of that, and it throws him off. And like so I might be with you that a couple of those, but I do think that I still generally just page to page found the scenes with Morgan compelling, but that I think part of that was really getting inside his life, and it was really effective for me with that. And man, when he is climbing on a basically like a drunken dare, and Snenic goes up the building, and now he feels responsible for Snenic, and then he puts his life in his hands as he's climbing up the building, and then he continues to make such horrible decisions. Like, oh my God, there's this weird figure living in that tower. Like, you should definitely tell someone. And then he's like, that would be the worst thing, Snenic, if we ever told anyone about this.
Yeah.
Because he's still like so self-centered and worried about getting in trouble and just being nagged by his grandparents. And he's like, let's keep that a secret forever. Never tell anyone. It was just like classic Morgan. But yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from that, Indy, because it was definitely somewhat repetitive and frustrating being with him.
But it also gave rise to the great tag team comedy of Little Snenic and Kina. I love those two.
Those are very fun. Yep.
Those are fun. The trolls or the Canuck, they're little stars for me. And
the trolls are great.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
The whole family.
There's someone saying there might have been a nod to George R. R. Martin with Snenic, Words may be things of air, but once they are spoken, they are also things that exist.
Ah,
Is that a GRRM
I didn't
quote?
realize that was a Germ thing. Yeah.
That's cool.
I remember the line though. It's a good one.
Yeah, with as I'm talking about Morgan, I am reminded of many arguments I've had with Malazan folks, specifically Alan, about Nimander in Toll the Hounds, who I love and most people find completely boring and too much. So like maybe it's just this read through. Who knows?
That I mean, I'll say there might have been a couple storylines I could have done with less of. Like, I'm trying to think of, do we need to have time spent there with POV characters for it to all work? I'm thinking of, let's say, being in Nabin. Like, we only spent a few chapters in Nabin, like with the conflict with the Duke, brothers that are dukes, and with Jessa, the Ranman, like housekeeper character that is our kind of window into that situation. And we meet this kind of suave count character who then comes back around and is going to be this point of contact for Miri. But that was possibilities to set that up, which is worrisome. But like I feel like that was important for setting up some major parts of this conflict. But those chapters were probably my least impactful of being in Nabin. Like, I feel like I could have been related secondhand some of the conflict that's going on between these dukes. Like, I didn't feel like they were truly brought to life in those chapters anyway. So yeah, a little bit of me getting diverted from all the other storylines, which I found more compelling.
And honestly, like a lot of my thoughts, and again, I don't want to backseat author, but like I think 2 royal trips in the first quarter of the book, I think might have been too much for me. And then like it drew down a little bit, and there's a lot of Morgan drinking in those 2 trips also. I don't know. Maybe that was it. Maybe not. Maybe it's just small little changes here and there. But that was, if I'm gonna pick one, that's the one that
the Herna Steer one sets up like Hugh there and what's like that. So that and then the Isgrimnor one that led to one of the most impactful scenes of the whole series for me so far. So I'm thankful we got that trip, and especially for that scene where they make it to Isgrimnor's deathbed before he passes away, and they have this incredibly emotional reunion, and Isgrimnor even gets to bless Morgan, and that was just so touching from Simon and Miri's perspective, and Tiamat, crying and seeing his old companion, that had traveled in the Rand together back in the day. Like, that was such an incredibly impactful scene that could only happen in this kind of sequel series where a lot of time has passed, and it's only impactful because of all the time we spent with Duke Isgrimnor in the previous books. So, man, I was definitely shedding some tears there. I thought Williams just delivered an emotional gut punch with that whole sequence.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
For sure.
Yes, Duke Isgrimnor is kind of like a surrogate father for both Miri and Simon, and they haven't got to spend much time together in recent years. And man, that was just such an incredible scene there, and seeing Morgan like not take it very seriously because he hasn't spent the time with Duke Isgrimnor. Like, it made me so frustrated with Morgan there of just feeling like he wants to go out and drink and ignore. But it also felt like it was coming from a place of like emotional discomfort for Morgan. Like, he often doesn't like being in these scenes of where he's being reminded of his father, or there's like emotional intensity. Like, I feel like his character was written with a lot of intention and depth of, there's so much going on underneath his psychological surface that he's not processing, and man, I just always felt like Morgan was written in such an interesting way, and a parallel to another character written around the same time by Joe Abercrombie. For those who've read Age of Madness trilogy, I felt like Orso and Morgan are just 2 characters created from the same cloth, and right around the same time. Like, so I don't think either author was able to read each other's books, so they just there's this interesting kind of second generation character of the son of these rulers, dealing with some of the same kind of psychology and inner conflict that I found so fascinating back in the Age of Madness and here too. I don't know if anyone else kind of thought of that comparison who's read that, but
I didn't think of it, but I think it's a great comparison. Yeah. There's a point being made by Sam, or questions being asked in the chat about Pasavalis and whether who's the bad guy in this? Like, so Adela clearly wanted to use him, but I think she was genuinely attracted to him as well. I think she's a minor, kind of just a bit manipulative, but probably was never going to be like a big baddie or anything. Whereas I think I lean more toward Pasavalis being a true like villain here because number one, the way he kills her is just so like sociopathic. Like he pushes her first and she's all mangled but still breathing, and then he just callously puts his foot on her face and snaps her neck, and it's just like, okay, that's horrible. So I have to feel, and then the letter that she opened, and who knows if she read it or not, we'll never know, but it was enough for her to know that it was from Drusus.
Yeah.
The brother who's trying to take over in Naban, the Duke's brother. So he's in cahoots in some way, shape, or form with Drusus, who is definitely the more aggressive brother down there. And I feel like there are even bigger players behind Drusus's bid for.
And we know there's Erkenlanders that are attacking the city, or
well, we don't know that they
posing,
yeah.
At least people posing,
set up. It means it feels too convenient though that look, we found your coins, therefore it must be Erkenlanders. I mean, like, wait a minute, that's not really good sleuthing there, is it?
But there does seem to be some sort of plotting going on between forces in Nakiga and whether it's in Hernastir or Erkenland and Naban. Like there seems to be some dark threads of this plot all weaving together. And I imagine the humans don't fully, if they're actually like in league with the Norns, they don't fully understand like the extremity of Utuku's like goals and plans to eradicate all humans. But maybe they're working for their own selfish ends to gain their own power and status in their own kind of separate kingdoms, and maybe they're not too happy with the idea that the High Ward and the Hayhold having control over them and whatnot. But I'm so curious about Pasavalis' motivations because we thought that he was just team Simon and Miri, but be very curious to dig in there.
Of course, we have among the Norns, there are at least three important players here. There's the queen, Utuku. There's the head of the singers, Akhenabi. Yeah. And then there's this resurrected crazy lady who's like, I think she's the one who's appearing as the Morriga.
The Whisperer.
She's the Whisperer.
Yep.
So that's all going on too. So to what degree are they pulling all these strings? Clearly in Hernastir, that the resurrected finger of the red hand there, she's obviously deliberately corrupting the leadership of Hernastir so that they can use them to their own ends. But we don't know really what's behind all this quite yet. But you have to think that Utuku and the creepy red hand lady, the Whisperer, are somehow. And Akhenabi too. Like, is he really serving Utuku? Is he using her as? Is he really calling the shots, or is she really back? Because she doesn't seem all there, really, does she? So
and we know from Heart of What Was Lost that Akhenabi's a plotter and has his own agenda. And then there's this like kind of other character that we meet who's this kind of mad Norn, or seemingly maybe a little bit insane, but. He's close to Utuku, and I don't know that the scenes in there where Vieki's brought to where the Whisperer was, and he's not told anything, and they're underground, and then there's that guy's telling him all this sorts of stuff, and she's whispering into his head. Like, those scenes were so scary and just intriguing, and we're setting up like so many questions. I loved all those scenes in there.
Yeah, good machinations here going on.
There's so much. There's a crazy amount that happens. Like, I still just, I think it was all working for me a little bit better than it was for Andy, but I don't know that it was, full 5-star book for me. I'm more with Andy. I'm like, maybe a little bit of a faster pace. The sprawl was so huge, but it's setting up so much that I feel like there's going to be immense payoffs. And I didn't love the Dragonbone chair either, but the payoffs that we had in Stone of Farewell and To Green Angel Tower were so immense, and I think there's just so much you get from taking that slower pace, where maybe for people who love the slow setup books. Like, we're a little bit hurt on the front end, but the payoffs are so dramatic when you set up so many things so carefully and with deliberate pace, and spend so much time with these different characters so that we can really care about them. And yeah, so I do feel you on the sprawl. Like it's so sprawling in terms of we're spanning the entire continent here and spending a good amount of time in each place, and he's not racing through any particular scene either. So it's.
Do you guys have a favorite new character in here? Favorite new character?
Probably Jarnulf.
Yarnulf, yeah.
Yarnulf.
Andy, you live in Minnesota. You're supposed to be able to pronounce Scandinavian names.
Not here. He's probably my favorite. Despite my inability to say his name, he's probably my favorite, and still I think the most mysterious of our main characters, as to why he has this huge, like he's made his whole life trying to just kill even just individual Norns.
Yeah. Man, I loved his backstory. The backstory scenes.
Lens.
The backstory scenes that we got with him were so powerful. Like when he was like, living as a slave as a kid, and his sibling died, his mother got taken away, and he's trying to take care of his sister, I think it was. And then, he's obsessed with, sword fighting and watching the sword fighting practice, and starts getting tutelage at night by the sword master. And oh man, I just ate that stuff up. It made his character really, really come to life for me, learning that backstory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually with you, Andy. Yarnulf is my guy. Yeah.
And you can say his name.
Yeah.
When he and it was kind of verbally sparring with Nazera, like I love those chapters where they're together on that mission. We're from her POV, and the chapter's called like the long game or the slow game or something like that, where she knows that something's going on with him, and she doesn't fully trust him, and that and they're kind of playing this long game of trying to get under the other skin or to learn about them. And man, I just thought all that was so well done between those two.
Yeah. I think Nazeru I like as well. I think that's my favorite storyline is the Norn storyline, and that's just great.
Is that yours, Nikhil?
Yeah. I think Nazeru was my favorite as well, because I think like, her backstory is so tragic in a way, and that she's like such a staunch believer in even kind of what she suffers. She seems like it's all justified. And then when, I think one of my favorite conversations in the whole book was her conversation with Yarnulf, where he first kind of like makes her start thinking that, not everything that she believed up until now is the absolute truth. And you could just see the way it's described with the kind of the wheels spinning, and she's like completely resisting. It's like, wow, are we even allowed to talk about this? Like, I thought that was just brilliantly done. So I'm curious to see where her character goes. It kind of reminds me. It's not really a 1-to-1 comparison at all. But for those who've read Malazan Book of the Fallen, like the Fellison, kind of the way she starts off in Deadhouse Gates, it's got that vibe to it for me. And that was probably my favorite character in Deadhouse Gates. So
let's hope Nazeru has a kinder fate.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So
a question for you guys. What kind of deadbeat dad did Josua turn out to be?
Man, he's not looking good.
I mean, what happened? What happened?
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
I mean, we don't know why.
Dads, period. Simon's not doing a good job dadding, or granddadding, really.
I mean, he's trying.
Oh, speaking of favorite new characters, I love Lilia, Simon's granddaughter.
Oh, she's so great.
She has so much spunk and liveliness. Every time she's on the page, I was just smiling. And man, what a great character. Williams is able to bring these characters like sometimes in few pages, like really like tangential side characters, but he brings them to life. They're so distinctive, the way he writes their unique like dialogue and voices. And when we get POVs, their internal monologue is always distinctive and interesting.
Also, the relationship between Morgan and Lilia is beautiful too.
Yeah.
Yes, the piglet, like he calls her pigling, like it feels so just they truly love each other, even if they haven't gotten to spend that much time with each other in recent times. Or and he's Morgan is thinking at the end when is he going to stick by Eolair? he wants to stay and fight with Aelair and not run into the forest like a coward, but he's imagining not wanting to die and leave Lilia without anyone. And that was just such a poignant moment where he was thinking back, and we saw enough scenes of them together where, you know, that felt organic, that he would care so much about her. And that's his, like, just the one relationship in his life that seems just kind of purely love filled and with no kind of excess baggage of any kind. So I love Lilia, and man, Nazero and Yarnall also great for new characters, but I love spending time with the old returning characters. Like, I find Simon just such a compelling character here, and even like where he was at the very end, and you know, he's playing that game of hide and seek with the kids, and he's having all these reflections in the middle of the game, and getting worried about Lilia, and I just found him really compelling at this point in his life, and to also what's going on with Tiamat, and you know, seeing, you know, him develop in his life, and he's married now, and his wife is great, and they're a great couple, scholarly couple, and you know, cross-cultural couple. I love that, and seeing, you know, him get involved with this book, and he invites a scholarly friend, like that's a side plot. Like, there's so many different plots, it's crazy, but you know, we spend like time in everyone to build them out, and you know, Count Aelair too. I'm so attached to his character. We didn't see too much of him in the original trilogy, but he's also so fully formed, and knowing he has this tragic, you know, backstory of you know, losing Megwyn, and you know, maybe he's been spending all his time away from Her Nestir, his homeland, and you know, giving everything of himself to try to make this High Ward government work, and to see him try to hang on and do his part, and still fight, and curious where he's left at the end. It seems like he's gonna be captured, or we don't see a death there at the end. So I'm assuming he's still around, I hope. But he's just such a wonderful character. I love this mix of the older generation returning characters with the new. It's just, it makes for such a rich panoply of characters we get to spend time with. For sure. Next generation of trolls too. Loved Snenick and his and you know, seeing Binabik again too. Like, he doesn't get a lot of page time, but every time he's on the page, it was counting, and felt like just the same exact Binabik as before. Like, Williams, I was so able to recapture the exact kind of voices of all these characters from, you know, decades before. I'm curious if he went back and reread, and how he did that. But he just fell back right in with these characters. They felt so believably themselves.
Yeah, I love. And speaking of, like, again, Williams being so with characters, Philip, to your question, like, yes, Joshua was like a bad dad and like that, but like that fits with my like conception of him, like this guy who is good and kind, but also is really, really cerebral, and at times doesn't like consider like a human cost of everything. And I could see him finding some mission or something that he thought he needed to leave for, not realizing the larger cost. Like, he was always a very, very flawed leader in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. And so I thought, like, it was sad, but it fit for sure.
Did he actually leave Vorjeva for this other woman, this member of the Scroll, the League of Scrolls? We don't know. Like, she disappeared around the same time, right? I think. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of mystery to solve there for sure.
And speaking of that mystery, I do want to give a shout out. He gets some screen time, but is also a really fun minor character. His brother Eton, just like this very competent guy over his head who does not want to get in this adventure, but just like is in it. I'm excited for him to be like the one who has to investigate and find out what happened there.
Oh my God, that letter that he sent back from the beginning of his journey was hilarious. Yes. Like, he is basically traveling with this, you know, this person he just does not get where he's coming from, and he's this family that with kids who are stealing stuff from him. Yeah. He, like, Brother Ethan does not know how to deal with this situation. He doesn't travel well on the water. Like, those are like just hilarious little lively lived-in details that Tad is just so great with. That, you know, if you do try to cut out, you know, pages, like maybe we could have cut out some, like, but we'd be losing some real gems that help to build out the world and all the side characters, and that's what, you know, even though this one took a while, I was pretty happy to be patient with it, because there's just so much incredible stuff in there that man, Brother, great call out, Andy, for Brother Eitan. But any any last thoughts, bits of reflections on the book? Anything we didn't cover in terms of a cool scene or plot events, or anything that comes to mind before we wrap it all up?
Do we want to do predictions for Empire of Grass before we wrap it up? Or
Oh, sure.
it's hard to put predictions on a Williams book because they always go where you don't expect.
Well, I already said that Unver is going to unite all of the Three Things tribes into one collective, very dangerous force that's going to hit all these kingdoms like something they've never even experienced. So that's my one prediction. I wish I knew what was going to happen with his sister, but yeah. I feel like, according to her prophecy thing, right, she's going to lose something very dear to her, but gain happiness or something, and something she didn't like to begin with, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So I'm racking my head thinking, okay, is she going to lose her daughter? Is Nazero in trouble because of that, or is she going to lose? I don't know. Vieki. What is she going to lose? But
yeah, Vieki was also told that kind of semi-prophecy by the Whisperer of like, you're gonna have to choose between, losing what you love the most or saving your race, like saving. And
that was. So he's got that thing going too. Yeah. So,
what's going on with the Unver and the crows and the wolves and the animals? Like, we haven't spent that much time with the wildlife in the series yet. So their whole connection to what's going on is very mysterious here, but
that was very Perrin and Wheel of Time kind of.
Yeah.
Shout out to Borjeva for dealing with her father.
Yeah.
She was like, okay, it's your time, old boy.
Yeah. Finally got the stab deserved.
Yeah. Old fecal mish. Yeah, that was a little satisfying moment there. Borsheva's been suffering for a long time, and I love. She was so thrilled to see Unver and have her son back, and then he's already just like immediately thrown into this life or death situation, and thank God for the crows coming out and saving him. That was absolutely nuts.
And guiding that
and Joshua's sword, he ended up picking up that Nidal was which sword?
Josua's sword. Yeah,
was that one? That was
the one that Josua had all through Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn.
Yeah.
That was Thorn? Was that
no? It's not one of those three.
It's not one of those three.
It's not. Oh, it's not one of those.
It's like Needle or something, right? But not.
It's, okay.
Right. Sounds.
Where are those original swords? Did Simon not have one of them at the end?
Of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn?
Didn't they get destroyed? I can't remember actually.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I was trying to figure that out. I'll have to go back and research that.
They're not appearing in this story.
And what was the Witchwood crown? I was definitely confused. He didn't give away too much about that. Like, it was this like abstract concept a little bit of
so there's several interpretations. The Siddhi reveal, like Aditu explains, or I think actually it's her brother, Jariki, who explains, it could mean this, it could mean this, it could mean this. Yeah. So it's pretty ambiguous.
And it's the title and also the cover, I was like, on the book it's not too distinctive, but when I looked up the actual cover art, I wanted to show everyone because the full cover painting is so gorgeous. Yeah, I pulled it up here. I'm gonna share it.
It's Michael Whedon, right?
Yeah, Michael Whelan, and
the
cover for Empire of Grass, like on the cover it really pops, but for some reason it doesn't really pop on Witchwood Crown. But here's the full cover painting, and it's like a stunning painting. I think it's called Darkness Over the Hayholt.
Yeah, why did they do it in such like a black and navy cover where you can't see this? This is beautiful.
Yeah, the cover on the actual book is pretty dull, but I can tell what he's going for when you look at the whole painting.
It makes. I assume that's Green Angel Tower just like menacing over the Hayholt, which is sort of what.
Well, the Green Angel Tower, I think, fell.
Yeah.
Or what's the one that had the
Red Priest Tower?
Trirati's tower that Morgan climbs, and that's still standing there menacingly. Yeah, I would bet
Yeldon's. I think it's Yeldon's tower is what it's called.
Tower. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's prediction. Way too early predictions for this. Who do you think, if there is a throne at the end of this, because there's clearly, I think, going to be a lot of civil and other wars, who will be on that throne? Because we have a lot of people who could, if we're going by purely, progenitive.
Hopefully Lilia.
You think Lilia?
So I've been trying to guess what the series title means, The Last King of Osten Ard, and one thing it could mean is that we're gonna have a queen at the end of this, but the other thing I thought it might mean was that the whole system of the High Ward was going to collapse, and we'd have more kind of regional governments without a high king, and Simon and Mary would kind of be the last ones, but. Nico says there's more to come on the Witchwood Crown, which is good. I definitely want more on that. Yeah. But any other predictions? I think I'm hoping, I would love to see Yarnwolf and Nazaru bridge some of their gap and kind of maybe get a little closer to each other.
You mean like a romance?
Possibly, yeah. I think so. I think they've been intriguing each other. I'd love to see them kind of team up, maybe as a couple, but also just kind of be fighting for good together.
I'm team cool. Yarzulu, or whatever their group name would be. Yarzuru.
That really rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
Nezolf.
I'm team Nezolf for sure.
Yeah. Well, they still got the singer with them though. Sal Meiji, I think his name is.
Oh yeah.
He's the only one left intact.
And Mako might not be dead. He might be hanging on. And that'll be interesting.
He's gonna be even grumpier though.
Yeah. And I think Miri's gonna get trapped in Naban among all their internecine conflict.
Oh yeah.
And she's gonna get caught up with maybe that Count and Jessa, and I think Jessa's going to come into play more with Miri's trip to Naban.
I think that guy that she likes, the Count, who's so charming, I have a feeling he's
got to be bad, right?
He's a bad dude. He's a bad dude.
Yeah.
Anytime someone's that nice,
yeah,
people keep saying he's nice. No.
Yeah.
And also, isn't Pasaveus like a big fan of him?
Yeah, he's the one who He sent Miri saying, "Oh, by the way, I have this buddy account. He can be your card up your sleeve, So
yeah, and at the time it was like, oh yeah, because he saved him, and now it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
There's also so much depth to the world building that I think big things are going to come into play that haven't really even been explored yet, like the Tanukadaya, because one of the books is the Navigator's Children, which I think is them.
They're navigators, yeah.
And so. They're going to come into play. I loved what he did in the original trilogy with the kind of humanoid creatures of the world, like the Kilpa, the Gants. Like I expect him to bring in elements like these again, whether they're new or returning ones. But those kind of took center stage in later books where would not have guessed that in the Dragonbone chair. Though there were those creatures that came up out of the ground repeatedly in the original trilogy that also attacked Nazara's company.
Yeah.
And I thought we're gonna do in Mako and that whole group. I was hoping they might have been done in earlier, but Tad waited until the very end with the dragon to kind of take care of those two.
There's another little surprise there because they had gotten it where tied it to the boulder and had gone over the cliff. And they were like, okay, we're talking about how to get, and then suddenly Kem is just like grabbed and, it bites him in half essentially. And tosses him
Also, I couldn't believe Yarnolf saved those guys with the fire arrows when they got attacked. Like, I'm like, Yarnolf, what are you doing? Like, let them, but he was so curious about what they were doing on their mission. And then he has this internal conflict the whole way of like, should I just have tried to take them out and kept doing what I was doing, or what's going on? Like, he's thinking he's made this horrible decision to have become tied to this quest, and I kept on thinking maybe he's right that it was a poor decision, but now that you're getting close to Nazaro and maybe we'll make headway with kind of turning her against the Norn culture,
Yeah.
Maybe it was a good call. Yeah.
We have to shout out Go Gamgar too as like the funniest character.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's so funny. Like he's like at that one point where the Sao Meiji is trying to get under the dragon in order to check out if it's a male or a female, and Go Gamgar is lifting it up for him, and he's like, "Don't drop it." And he's like, "It does feel a little slippery." You know? He's so funny. I love that guy.
I love
beat up though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a great little character. Like he helped Yarnolf, like when
he's
he
a great
got
big
that
character, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He helped Yarnolf like so that he could fire that arrow with the message to get off that message. And,
well, he's enslaved, you know, and I feel for him
Yeah.
too. And there's another aspect of this is the callousness with which he's treated by especially Mako. Yeah.
And we learn right at the end that there's this navigator's armor that's beneath the Snagleman Castle, which is why they've taken Vieki all the way out there. And so finally we learned at the end like what this secret mission was that Vieki was being brought out on. And yeah, I mean, there's so many bits and pieces that are getting set up, and there's so much, and I feel like because there's so many moving pieces that it does benefit to try to read it soon after, so that you keep all these details fresh and keep the momentum of all these plots that he set in motion. So yeah, I doubt I'm going to be able to go too long. I'm going to decide if I'm going to do a little palate cleanser or maybe just go into Empire of Grass if I can.
Guys, I have like 5 books I got to read before I get.
You got a lot of reading to do, Philip.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold off. Like I think literally as soon as this is over, I might pick up Empire of Grass.
Like what happened to Aelair? Like I gotta know, but he might take a long time to pick up some of these threads. Like we gotta go to all these different locations. But one thing he did right at the end, he actually bookended the whole book with the same character, the very beginning. Ooh, Andy's already started.
I'm already 70 pages in. I couldn't wait. For all of my talk, I've already started the next book.
He bookended the book with Tanahaya, the Scythi messenger character.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, that was a great first scene of, I'm thinking, oh, we're getting the Scythi messenger, and I don't know if it was exactly the first scene, but close to the beginning, maybe the first scene, but she, gets basically assassinated, and right at the beginning, and this whole book, she's out from this poison, and we're so frustrated that the Scythi and the Erkenlanders can't connect, and she gets brought back, and finally at the very end, she's healed of this poison, and for him to end on that note, like it feels like Tanahaya is going to play a role, and there's going to be more there.
Back, at her saying, "I'm poisoned and I need the arrows," and Pasavalas is like, I'm not sure where they are. Now I'm thinking he was holding them back deliberately, right? That whole thing becomes much more sinister in retrospect,
Oh yeah.
But of course, I wonder too, why didn't he just like finish the job, with her? But if he's involved in that party that ambushed her in the first place, but we'll see, I guess.
We had some bingers in the chat. Nico ended up mostly binging this one too, and Heidi, yep, the only way to go. Derry's saying nothing better than the urge to keep going when a book finishes. Yeah, there's a lot of cliffhangers here too. I just, I love that he's given us so many great reasons to continue. But it is puzzling to me why more people who read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn didn't pick up with this sequel series. Because if you got to the end of that one, you've gotten through so much and be invested in the characters and the land already. It's so easy to pick back up, in a continuation.
And so far for me, this is even better. I love Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. But
when you say it's, I'm curious. Just when you say it's better, like, do you mean like you feel like he kind of developed as a writer, or like the writing is just a little bit more elegant, or
sharper? Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah, I think he's turned into an even better writer, and I'm a huge fan of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. So this is, for me, if he keeps up this level, this is going to be one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, because I think when one revisits characters in a sequel series, people just assume that, oh, it's not going to be like how the classic one was or whatever. The ones who had read the first trilogy or 4-book series or whatever you want to call it. But I think, like Philip said, I mean, I think this is for me an even better start than Dragonbone Chair was. I like it even more than To Green Angel Tower. I think that I get the feeling like if this is where it starts, it's gonna be a one hell of a ride, you know.
And Nico's on the train of feeling like this overtakes the original series. Absolutely love Memory Star and Thorn. Just added so much to the world and the story. Such a phenomenal writer. Yeah, the people that have continued with the book seem to love them, like Nico and Jimmy. This sequel series has become a favorite, and yeah, it's a really really awesome start. And I do think Andy, I think now that he set up so many pieces that the pacing I can't help but probably speed up a little bit. And I'm sure it's. Are you feeling it all like it's that way now that you're into Empire of Grass?
Yeah, I mean, the first 70 pages are great, and I think there is like a real momentum. So I'm hopeful. Again, sort of maybe I'm just cautious because of Memory and Sorrow and Thorn. I actually thought had diminishing returns in its world building, like it got too big. And so I'm hopeful that doesn't happen in this series, because like even though I have some problems with Morgan and some of the pacing therein, like yeah, the stage that has been set is great, and I still love a lot of these characters. So I'm very excited to continue on.
When Derry read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn long ago, remember nothing more than the feeling of satiation and awe. Have to reread before moving into the new one.
Yeah,
it picks up on so many threads. So I would definitely recommend rereading if you wanted to continue on into the sequel.
I also agree
series.
with Heidi. Age of Madness is better than First Law. I agree.
Oh wow,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we're seeing these authors, comparing their debut books to, they've had so many years of practicing their craft and honing it, and in Tad's case, writing multiple other series between, but it is interesting to feel like there's true development in the writing craft side of things. I do feel like this book one is written. I agree with you, Philip. There's something just a little bit more sharp about it, a little less clunky, and how he's setting up all the pieces and the different locations and POVs. And
to Mick Garfield's point there, I think he's onto something. I was thinking the same thing. Obviously, we all know that George R. R. Martin borrowed a lot from Tad Williams, but now I feel like it's borrowing the other way, right? Where Tad Williams has developed as an author, and there may be a bit of some George R. R. Martin influence in that.
Yeah. Oh,
I do
wow.
feel like that this is kind of somewhere in between Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn and A Song of Ice and Fire in terms of the tone,
Yeah. Oh, that's a great comparison. Littlefinger and Pasvalis.
Pasvalis,
great
comparison, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh, and Darius saying Age of Madness too. Yeah, that's a must read for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, audio. I mean, great by audio. I know Darius loves lively audiobook narrators, so that one.
Oh, and that's a brilliant audiobook narrator anyway. So
yeah.
I'm glad this was delightful. Of Madness.
Oh,
I can tell your face, Andy. You were not.
I read the first book and then read the first couple of the second. And was like, not for me. Abercrombie is not my author, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Andy, and I love Andy's fantasy iconoclasm. Just great against the grain.
Mainly directed at Abercrombie, but there's some other ones, and Sanderson, which are two of the highest selling fantasy novels of today. So as I'm saying that makes sense. But yeah,
Tad Williams went on with Nico, and I think also had an interview with Jimmy. I mean, once I'm done with this series, I think I'm gonna want to hit up those kinds of interviews, and I just want to be so avoidance of spoilers now that I'm right in the midst of this. But yeah, I can't wait to watch some of those interviews. So thanks everyone for joining in the chat, and this was awesome. I can't wait to continue just diving in on this rich series with all of you fine gents. And so yeah, thanks. Let us know any of your thoughts about this book in the comments. You're catching this on replay, and we'll catch you maybe next month with Empire of Grass. See you.
From your mouth and the queen's mouth, or whatever the saying is.